Okay, this evening I decided to shoot fish in a barrel, uh, critiquing the musings of Robert Reich. Unfortunately, you know, you, when I deal with people like this, it always makes me wonder: do they believe what they're writing, or are they really that ignorant? So, I'm going to pick apart an article he came up with here. Okay, so he's sitting there talking about how the top 1% increased wealth from 26.6 to 34%. Well, now the bottom half can hold a mere 2%. And it's this bogus income inequality argument. Uh, the issue has been known for over 100 years, known as Pareto distribution. The common figure quoted is 80-20, but it doesn't have to be. That's just the easiest, when you're looking at the curve, the easiest way the eye can perceive it. It actually can shift out much further than the 80-20, just depending, as long as it holds the same general progression of the curve. So 70-30 is not out of hand. Actually, in 70-10 isn't out of hand. It doesn't even necessarily have to add up to 100%. So the thing is, the idea of equality being, or excuse me, wealth being concentrated on one end of the spectrum and minimal on the other is a well-known factor, and the amount we're seeing is not outside of historical norms. We've been at these levels before. Interestingly enough, the last time we've been at these levels where we have good accounting was 1920s. Afterwards, there was a shift in a shift in the other direction to a certain extent. But the point being is, in general practice, 20% of the population holds 80% of the wealth, and nothing makes it budge. No socialist country on the world has got this number to budge. No communist country has got this to budge. Essentially, the Pareto curve holds true. And again, it's not a fixed 80-20 number. It's 80-20 is the easiest way to visualize it, but as long as it's anywhere on that curve, it essentially falls into place. And it'll shift back and forth a little bit. But, so the question would be is, does Mr. Robert Reich know this? He should. By God, he was a Rhodes Scholar, and you'd think that they might mention that in his economics course, even if he didn't major in it. Uh, so, uh, the first is trickle down economics. They and their apologists claim that their wealth trickles down to everyone else as they invest it and create jobs. Now, this is where I really start to believe that uh, this is purely a troll, and this guy can't possibly even believe what he's saying. Because okay, the term trickle down economics doesn't actually exist. There is no economic theory called trickle down economics. There's nothing, when you define it out, there is no economic theory that fits that definition with another name. Uh, what it trickle down economics is a term that was invented to ridicule the idea of lowering taxes. When people came up with the idea that they could use wealth or taxes to redistribute wealth from the upper classes to the lower, and then people later on, and ultimately, even when we had a 90% income tax, it did not violate the Pareto distribution. So when people would argue that, well, since high taxes aren't changing anything, what if we lower the taxes? Uh, the left created the term trickle down economics as a way of making fun of people who are opting for lower taxes at the top. Uh, the idea that the problem is he is functioning, or at least he's trying to get you to believe that wealth is a fixed thing, and wealth is not a fixed thing. It's not merely something you measure in money. Uh, give you an example. Okay, so let's say uh, I set up an area. I go out in my yard and I get a rake and I just rake up every bit of leaf and twig and everything I can and make a big giant pile in my backyard. Okay. Uh, and then I decide to populate it with night crawlers. And then I basically take good care of them. I watch them. I do everything I need to do to them, making sure it stays, do all the research, make sure it stays suitably wet, the right temperature. And I just basically start churning out night crawlers and I sell them to fishermen and make money. Okay. I basically started with nothing. Okay. The leaves, okay, yeah, technically were my property, but no one's going to, it's pretty hard to buy leaves and it's pretty hard to sell leaves in any other compostable manner. And I can pretty much go find worms for free or at least get them very cheaply. And then once I sink my labor into it, I have created wealth. Night crawlers. Somebody's going to want them. Everybody who fishes needs them. So his idea is that maybe at some point I could turn that into some kind of nightcrawler empire. But the point being is, I didn't have to take wealth from anywhere else to make it happen. I just needed to put labor and brain power into it to make it happen. And we have lots of examples of that. So there is no fixed pie as he's inferring. Now, this is so, so for 40 years, as wealth on the top has soared, almost nothing has trickled down. Adjusted for inflation, the median wage today is barely higher than it was 4 decades ago. Huh. Yeah, he's absolutely right. Because, 40 years ago, the rich had cell phones, and now it's 40 years later, and they're still the only ones who have them. We don't have them. We watch the wealthy going around with their gigantic freaking bricks going around being all hoity-toity and snooty to us because they're rich with their giant cell phones because nothing's changed in 40 years. There's no wealth moving around. Well, wouldn't you say a phone is a form of wealth? Okay. You didn't have it 40 years ago. And it didn't come from the government taxing people and shifting money around. It came from some rich person's money getting invested in the right place and ending up going to people who could think it through but didn't have the money to do it. Because if you look at, with a few exceptions, most of the rich people don't know how to make things. They just know where a good place to put their money is. Okay, so everybody who basically put money into making cell phones made money. We got cell phones. We got little tiny boxes that allowed us to call from practically anywhere on the planet. Where if we choose to, we can always be in contact. We have access to all the information in the world. We have access to entertainers from around the world. We have access to practically any media ever created at some place, somewhere, somehow you can find it. I can listen to any song that pops into my head, and I say, "Oh, I want to listen to that." Hey, Google, play me this. Sorry, waiting for my phone to launch. Yay, it didn't. Um, so, I mean, and that's just one example. I mean, okay, I could say, what about GPS? Oh, 40 years ago, the rich had absolute control of GPS and they didn't have to use maps and they were able to just navigate around at will. But 40 years ago, GPS didn't exist, and now the poorest person on the planet can geolocate themselves. Uh, 40 years ago, the wealthy could just push a button in their car and their window would go up and down, and we have hand cranks, and it's not changed. That's all we got now. It's still got hand cranks. No. So his idea of how you calculate wealth is gibberish and nonsense. Wealth is not just merely the monetary numbers. Wealth is uh, what we have and what we can do with it. Now, mind you, for most people, a phone is at best a convenience. But if you have a business, it's a lifeline. It is so much better. I mean, imagine the idea of 40 years ago being able to get a phone, uh, get a small connection to it, and be able to run credit cards with a handheld phone. Okay, the super wealthy aren't doing that. It's your average schmo middle class person who's running a business who's using that kind of square technology. Okay, we benefited from now. You know, if you choose the only now, if all you do is uh, watch TikTok on it all day long, that's your fault. If you use your phone as a wealth creating tool, you have the ability to do that absolutely regardless of your wealth. All right, let's see what else this diminutive clown has to say. Um, I don't know, our income went up. No, he's being kind of goofy here, saying promising it would generate $4,000 increased income for everyone else. Did you receive it? Well, that was $4,000 average, and since this clown doesn't seem to know what a Pareto distribution is, he wouldn't understand that an average means that some people are going to get more and some people are going to get less. I mean, if you're at the if you're at the absolute bottom tier, living in a one room apartment, uh, making minimum wage, drawing a welfare check, you're not going to suddenly get $4,000 of extra income per year. If you're in the center, you probably get something close. I know our income went up because of those tax cuts. In fact, we got bonuses that came close to that alone. So, uh, happy, happy. Okay. And now the claim that the super wealthy don't really create jobs or wages. Jobs are created when the average working people earn enough money to buy all the goods and services they produce, forcing companies to hire more people and pay them higher wages. Well, that's kind of mixed. Okay, so a lot of people on the left practice what I call coffee can economics. What they do is they say, "Oh, this rich billionaire, he's got $1 billion, and all he does is, he's Scrooge McDuck, and he's rolling around on piles of it. Nothing, and it doesn't benefit anybody else." Um, the super rich don't hold that much cash. I mean, they might have a little vault where they store maybe a couple 100,000 or a couple million, depending on what's going on. But the vast bulk of their wealth is sitting in financial institutions and or being invested. If it's in a financial institution, the financial institution doesn't make a little vault and say, "Hey, this is Scrooge McDuck's money and we're going to just lock it in here and it's going to stay here and wait for him to come get it." No, they're investing it. Even if Scrooge McDuck uh, tosses his $1 billion at a bank and puts it in a CD that doesn't seem to be doing anything, the bank is loaning it out to other people. Consumption doesn't create jobs. Uh, Apparently, this guy was hiding in a bunker somewhere during COVID-19. Uh, People were given plenty of money to spend. Didn't seem to create a lot of jobs, did it? Uh, the issue is you have to have production in order to create wealth. Production creates jobs. Uh, you can demand something into infinity. If there is no production to meet the demand goes on forever. Only production makes demand satiated. Only makes have meaning. Okay. Okay. Baloney. Even if they're being rewarded, there's no reason why the free market would reward vast multiples of what the rich were rewarded decades ago. The market can induce great feats of invention and entrepreneurialism with lures of hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars, but not billions. Well, why not? The monetary supply has been increasing. The value of the dollar has been going down. Why would we be stuck at an arbitrary level of $1 million? I mean, you're again. It's really hard to imagine this guy is this stupid and or ignorant. I mean, you're talking about in 1980, uh, the number trillion was barely in use. And now we're talking about a government that spends and is in debt to multiple trillions of dollars. The expansion of the monetary supply is at a far greater rate than the expansion of the population. So the idea that the richest a person could become would be a millionaire uh, doesn't make sense. Mathematically, this guy's a fool. Now, here's the fun part. Billionaires' campaign contributions have soared from relatively modest 31 million in 2010 elections to 1.2 billion in the most recent presidential cycle, a nearly 40-fold increase. What have they got for their money? Tax cuts, freedom to bash unions, monopolize markets, and government bailouts. Their pockets have been further lined by privatization and deregulation. Oh boy, Robert Reich. Okay, so the problem here is, and he's obviously missing the chicken and egg argument here. He's assuming this is happening in the way he's describing. I mean, it's happening on a level. I'm not saying it's not happening. It's how you calculate what the effect is. Do rich people make contributions to politicians in order to influence them and get what they want? Well, yes. And there's a reason, because the power is at the government level. So why wouldn't you try to influence it in your behalf? That's just normal human behavior. The fault is not in the amount of money these people have or how they choose to spend it. The fault is in the government, in the fact that they control things that these people can influence. If the controls weren't there, they couldn't influence them via the government. The third myth is that they're superior human beings, rugged individuals who did it on their own and therefore deserve their billions. 6 out of 10 wealthiest Americans alive today are heirs to the fortunes passed on to them by their wealthy ancestors. But what he's neglecting there is wealth is generational in the way that each succeeding generation So if you have the wealthy ancestor, each generation afterward tends to be less wealthy than the one before it because they don't have all the same traits that their wealthy ancestor had to come up with this stuff. Now, one of the things, and nobody says they're superior human beings, okay, it's a very simple concept. Okay, if you're born into a family that has $1 billion, okay, you grow up, you're infused from the moment you can conceive of what's going on around you, the idea of monetary figures that are far beyond what the average person like you and presumably, or I and presumably you make, because they're in tune with these numbers. They see these amounts of money being spent and used and uh, invested, and things are bought at these extremely higher levels than what the average person sees. They are infused with a better idea on how to handle money. Now, in some cases, they may barely be able to handle the money, and the best they can do is hire other people to handle the money for them. And they'll go to either their rich ancestor tells them, hey, stay with this accountant and stay with this investment group. They'll keep you straight for a while. So yeah, but they know how to make rough decisions on these levels. Now, you take your average person in the lowest 20th percentile of the income stream and throw a couple $1 million at them. Odds are really good in a couple years. They aren't going to have a couple $1 million. They're going to be pretty close to back to where they started. Again, that's Pareto distribution in action. It's an exercise I used to throw at my students where, okay, I'm going to give you a dollar figure, and I want you to, and I know you're just going to kind of blow this off, but if you really sat down and do it on paper like I'm suggesting, it'll start clicking. So I'm going to give you a dollar amount, and what you're going to do is you're going to write down a piece of paper saying, okay, with this amount of money, I would do this. And the general idea, your goal, is to figure out how you would put this money to work in such a way that you're preserving the wealth you've acquired, and it's generating some kind of income to your behalf. And then you got to ask yourself, am I really actually capable of handling this level of money? So for instance, like if I said $10,000, okay, well, some of you would probably sit there and say, okay, well, if I get rid of some of these debts, I'll actually increase my wealth, and that would probably be the best use of it, and it would probably use up your money pretty quick. And by the way, in this exercise, we're not talking about buying a new house, buying a new car, unless those are things you actually need to create wealth or do a job or whatever. I'm not talking about taking trips or anything like that. I'm talking purely about taking the money, investing it. Okay, so 100,000. Okay, at our level, we don't usually have 100,000 as a transaction to start with, but it's still in our realm of thinking. I mean, it's a year to 3 years income for a lot of us. So you can probably figure out, okay, well, yeah, pay off debts, um, maybe down payments on some rental property, maybe some things in the stock market, blah 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 blah. Okay, $1 million. Okay, well, now it starts getting a little harder because it's like, okay, well, and now if you think rental properties, you're talking, um, you're talking about having to manage probably 15 to 20 properties at that point. Um, if you're thinking about starting up some kind of business, you have to ask yourself, do you really know what it takes to start a business? Uh, do you know how to manage the floor space of a business operation? Do you know how to uh, warehouse arrange, order, and do retail sales in a way that's profitable. There's a trick to it. If you're talking about manufacturing something, can you get the proper floor space and plants to set things up in order to produce what you want to make, and at the same time not run afoul of various regulations that might get in the way of you being able to make what it is you want to make. Um, and most of us who are watching this can probably handle $1 million. Okay? 100 million. And you're like, whoa, but again, we're not talking trips, we're not talking uh, houses, cars, planes, boats, the latest style. We're talking about how do you take $100 million and actually put this on paper and figure out how you're going to invest this. Okay, so if you try to stick it into rental properties, you're talking over 200 properties at this point. If you're talking about building some kind of factory or some kind of retail outlet, you can pretty much you can make the first part of it happen. Where it's like, okay, I can buy this. I have the startup to make this happen. I can get the employees, all the stuff that needs to make it happen. But will it generate a profit? Will it generate a profit that's enough to uh, generate wealth faster than your property and plant uh, depreciate? Gets fun. 500 million. Try the same exercise. Try to figure out how you do all this. Okay, at some point, I guarantee you're going to be going, yeah, I need to go talk to some cigar chomping suit who's going to be all uppity in my face and go, okay, show me what to do with this because I'm going to piss it away, not on purpose. I'm trying actually to keep it, but I'm going to piss it away at this point. And then imagine 1 billion. Okay, if you haven't been brought up with it, it's really hard to manage. Now, mind you, you do get these people. I mean, obviously, uh, in this country, people in the upper middle and center middle class do occasionally break out and get up to the upper level without getting some kind of big dividend or some kind of big payout where they make it themselves. Um, and I think that's an example of a superior being where they just have the brains to be able to work it, and they know what they don't know. When they realize that they're doing something they don't understand, they know when to delegate and get the right expertise to handle something, and they prevent themselves from getting into trouble. So, and he says Jeff Bezos' garage start was funded by $250,000 investment from his parents. Yeah, but okay, 250,000, that's $250,000. Okay, yeah, it's not chump change, but turning $250 million or $250,000 into what Amazon is today, um, that's not. It's not the example of him being coddled through this. Uh, I mean, his parents very well might have been saying, "Well, yeah, let's see, maybe they. I don't know if they thought Jeffy was special or not, and they said, okay, here's 250,000, and we'll probably never see that again." Or if they said, "Oh, yep, he'll turn it into something." Uh, and it's like Bill Gates' mother used her business connections to help land a software deal with IBM that made Microsoft. Okay. Yeah, nobody ever uses their connections to get anywhere. I've never been hired somewhere because somebody there knew me. Okay. I mean, that's just the nature of things. If you know the right people, it helps. You can learn to meet the right people. It's a matter of knowing how to move in circles that are a little bit beyond your area without being too big for your britches. I mean, it's possible. I mean, I know people in the real estate world who are essentially started at my level and got competent enough doing things that the more wealthy people in our organizations, where they could circle up there saying, hey, yeah, blah, blah, you know me. You've watched me for a few years. I'm pretty competent at this. You know, if you toss 100K my way, this is what I can do with it. And I see people who do that, where they're able, they started with pretty much nothing. They mingle in a group. They know who they are, they know what they know, and they know what they don't know. And when they find a niche that works for them, they can talk people with more money than them into investing in them to make things happen. So I'm sorry, Robert Reich never got this opportunity. He sounds very bitter about people who work hard to get things. Do, do, do. Yeah, trickle down. There's no justification for today's extraordinary concentration of wealth at the top, except that it's been a known thing that's probably existed as long as human beings have had uh, probably wealth beyond the hunter-gatherer level. Most of this is him just quoting people because he can't actually speak for himself. I mean, yeah, quotes are nice, but yeah, if all you got is quotes. And yeah, he's quoting both Roosevelts. And fantastic. Tells me pretty much all I need to know. But I hope you don't mind me taking a few shots at the fish in the barrel. Don't mind me plucking the low hanging fruit. No slam on Robert Reich there. All right. So please smash the like button if you like this. What do you think? Is Pareto distribution a real thing? Has Robert Reich made some really good points in this article? Tell me down below in the comments section. If you know somebody who might find this interesting, please share it with them. If you like what I had to say, consider subscribing. I put out a handful of these videos each week covering a wide variety of topics. Thank you for spending time with me tonight. Hope to see you again in a future video.